This is a ball python, the most popular pet snake you can get. But if you're looking for a ball python, I think you'd like these 5 snakes a little better. Just to be clear, don't get me wrong, I love ball pythons. I've got a few of them. I've talked about them since the beginning of the channel. However, I do think that there are some snakes that are probably better for most people. And here's the deal. I think people are looking for snakes that maybe not beginner, but aren't super difficult, aren't dangerous, don't take up too much space. And that's what they're looking for in a ball python. And ball pythons have some flaws. So I'm gonna go over 5 snakes and maybe one of them is better for you. Let me know in the comments. Number 5, leopard boas. Now, leopard boas are really Sonoran boas, but I just have a leopard boa. We're talking about a boa species that is a little bit smaller than something like Franny here. Franny is a full-size BCI or BI, a boa imperator, a Central American boa. Not to make it more confusing, basically, these are bigger animals. A regular boa constrictor imperator is going to be 10 foot, maybe even bigger, where a Sonoran boa is going to be much smaller. We're talking similar size to ball pythons. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, I kind of like boas better, but they're too big, well, there you go. There's also Hog Island boas, but we're going to talk about Sonorans today because another thing with ball pythons is they need a much higher humidity level than most people will give them. That's something that I think a lot of people make the mistake on is they'll give their ball python either an entire enclosure that's 80% humidity, which is too much, or they're gonna give an enclosure that's not humid enough. And I guess with humidity, it's just, you need to be in the sweet spot, especially with animals like ball pythons. Sonoran boas, like my leopard boa here, it's a lot easier. It's so much easier. It's a lower level of humidity, very close to what your house is gonna be, so you don't really need to do anything special. And the heating is very similar to a ball python. And these animals eat a lot better. That's the other thing. Ball pythons in general, a lot of the times they go on food strikes, like Pikachu here, for example, will stop eating for 5 months every year. It's just what he does. It's no big deal. He doesn't lose weight. He still breeds every year. It's not a big deal, but it's just something to do with ball pythons. It's what they are. Where boas eat like boas, people say. They're voracious eaters. I've never had any of my boas ever skip a meal. So if you're looking for something similar size, but a little bit more interesting, maybe you want something like a leopard boa. But if you're saying, oh, Adam, I want a python, I want an old world snake, not a new world snake. And if you're wondering, in general, there are some exceptions. Boas come from New World, right? So think South America, Central America, that area. And then pythons come from the Old World. So Africa, Asia, although there's some exceptions, like sand boas, for example, do come from Africa. And anyway, let's just move on. If you're looking for a true python species, but you don't want ball pythons, maybe carpet pythons are for you. Now keep in mind with carpet pythons, I'm putting them all together, but there's a bunch of different ones and they're all pretty different. So for example, coastal carpet pythons can get, 9 feet, where Irian are gonna stay closer to 5 feet. So find the right one for you. And then there's of course diamond pythons and rough scale pythons, which are all in the Morelia genus, just a little different. But carpet pythons in general, mine that you see here, this is a jungle cross with an Irian. So this animal's about 6 foot, maybe a little bigger. I've got a pair of them, high yellows, beautiful, fun to handle. Just keep in mind that these animals take a little bit of work to make handleable. Mine came to me perfectly tamed out, but similar features, right? So pythons have those pits in their face. Well, most of them. I mean, black-headed pythons and woma pythons don't, but all the rest of them do. So kind of like the movie Predator, where they can see a heat signature, pythons see the same thing, where boas, there's exceptions again, but Sonoran boas don't. Emerald tree boas do. But anyway, let's not get caught up in the weeds here. Carpet pythons, they're gonna be an arboreal snake, or at least semi-arboreal. So they're gonna need a higher enclosure in terms of height, although ball pythons, I recommend giving them some climbing space. They do like to climb. You're gonna find them on the ground much more, where carpet pythons, by rule, are semi-arboreal. Carpet pythons also eat really well, and although you can vary diet with basically, well, a lot of snakes, you could feed quails to ball pythons too if you wanted. I often feed quails to my carpet pythons because in the wild, they're gonna eat birds a lot of the time, where it's just easier to feed rodents in captivity, and there's nothing wrong with always feeding rodents. It's just fun to change things up a bit. And with carpet pythons, there are morphs, not as many as, with ball pythons. That's the one thing ball pythons have going for them, or there's lots, but one of them, there's just so many freaking morphs. So if you want a white snake or you want a yellow snake or just a regular looking one, you can get that. And obviously this video isn't a knock to ball pythons. I've got a bunch of them. And I get this question a lot. Adam, you've got so many animals. How do you keep track of them all? Well, I use Husbandry Pro. I've been working with Husbandry Pro for a long time, and what's different between this app and a bunch of others, other than the fact it's for your animals, is they constantly innovate, and they're responsive. Have you ever had one of those apps where something's not working and you don't know what to do about it, and then you just throw your hands up in the air and give up? With Husbandry Pro, every time I've had suggestions, I reach out and then they email me back, and then sometimes they actually fix the problem if it's a problem that needs to be fixed. And what I love about it is under 6 animals is always free. So if you want to try it out, you can. So download the app, it's free, punch in your animals, and you can start managing and see if you like it. What I love is there's push notifications for feeding. So for example, some of my ball pythons when they're babies eat once every week. The larger ones eat every 10 days. The Burmese pythons eat every 6 weeks. The boas eat every 4 weeks. So it's difficult to remember. I get a push notification because I set it up in Husbandry Pro. So the day before I know, hey, tomorrow morning, thaw some rats because you got to feed that afternoon. Plus there's incubation and birthing records. If you're a breeder, you can transfer ownership from you to another Husbandry Pro user when you sell the animal. And that way, all the feeding and shedding and pooping, whatever you log, goes right to that person and you don't have to give them a piece of paper or a spreadsheet. I use Husbandry Pro, I have for years. I love the app and I think you will too if you want to manage your animals a lot easier than with pen and paper or with your memory. Click the link below and try Husbandry Pro for free. But maybe you're thinking, Adam, you know what? I actually like that boa, but I wish there was one a little bit bigger. Just like not too big, but a little bigger. Well, Dmal Boas might be for you. Dmal Boas are the exception again because this is an old world boa species. So these are from Madagascar. I've actually found them in the wild in Madagascar. And what's interesting about Dmal Boas is although they're very placid and fun and they're generally not fossorial but terrestrial, so they're going to be on the ground most of the time, their poop absolutely reeks. The way we found the Dmal Boa in the wild is because I keep Dmal Boas in captivity. I smelled something and I knew what it was immediately, and there was a Dmal Boa like 10 feet away. This is such a crazy, stupid story, but anyway, the point is the only downside I think with Dmal Boas, other than the fact that their poop stinks like ridiculously for some reason, although they're only going to do it about once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on how much you feed them. And also the size thing, because Dmal Boas males are generally going to be 5 or 6 foot. Females in general are going to be around that 6 foot mark, maybe 7, but there are outliers that can get to 9 feet. All the Dmal Boas I've ever found in the wild, which is several of them, were 5 feet, 6 feet. There were some juveniles that were smaller. And the ones I've kept in captivity, all of them are around that 5 to 6 foot range, no matter if they're male or female. So they're a great size, but they're heavier bodied. So a ball python this length, my Dmal Boa is about the same length, a little bit longer, but my Dmal Boa probably weighs 4 or 5 times as much. And they're much stronger. I mean, pound for pound, I would argue Dmal Boas are the strongest snake that there are, which is weird because normally our boreal snakes who need to keep their body in the trees are stronger than terrestrial snakes, but this one breaks the mold on that. And again, keep in mind, this is my opinion. I don't know if there's ever been like testing done, but they're very strong, they're heavier bodied, and you don't need an enclosure super high because although they will climb a little bit, especially as adults, they're not gonna really wanna be in the trees or perches or anything like that. Their pattern is amazing. There might be a few morphs floating around, but nothing crazy. And I just think it depends on which you like. If you want more peaches or you want darker ones, there's a difference in, the locale of where they're from in Madagascar. And when they come over here, some are lighter, some are darker. But they eat really well. They're really placid in my experience. They're pretty slow moving in general. I mean, when they strike for food, it's different, but they're a snake, that's how it works. But just they're gentle and I really like them. And I think that they look super cool. And in my opinion, they're so underrated. And I know we went through this renaissance of pricing where Dmal Boas got really expensive during, the whole pandy thing when Clint and I were really talking a lot about them. And there wasn't really a lot of supply to deal with the demand. But what I've seen recently traveling to reptile expos is instead of them being $1,000 or $800, they're, $200 to $400. So they're more affordable again, like they used to be. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of them for reptile people, even if it's your first snake, because even though they're a little bigger, I think they could make a really great first snake. Plus they're a lot drier than ball pythons and they don't go off food. Number 2, you knew it was gonna be on the list, right? Spotted pythons. Well, really, if you want a pygmy python or a children's python, they're all in the Antheresia genus. They're all really simple, but in my opinion, this is the best first snake if you want a python. It's the smallest python genus in the entire world. Most of the time, if you get, say, a pygmy python, they're gonna top out 3 to 4 feet. Spotted pythons might get a little bit bigger, but look at this animal. This is a full-grown male. And the females do get a bit bigger, but they're almost always gonna be shorter than a ball python, and with maybe the most crazy exception, always skinnier, very less heavy bodied, skinnier bodied, lighter bodied is the word I'm looking for. than a ball python. They are semi-arboreal too, so you're gonna find these guys in the trees or on perches, right in captivity, as much as a carpet python, and they're from the same part of the world. Carpet pythons are from Australia, and I think there's a few of them that are from New Guinea. Spotted pythons, again, from Australia. So an Australian species, and if you didn't know, in Australia, you can only keep native species with a few exceptions. So if you're from Australia watching this, you're welcome. Although you probably already knew that. And you wouldn't be watching a video about ball python alternatives because you can't, or would you? All right, let's cut the inner monologue here and just tell you exactly why I love them so much. They're gentle. They're, again, not crazy fast moving. That's the thing with people, oh, we'll just get a corn snake. Well, corn snakes are great, but they're colubrids. So they move a little bit faster, a little bit more squirmy wormy. You notice how easy this animal is to handle? Well, corn snakes, although easy to handle, they're faster and a little bit more jittery. And in general, with some exceptions, colubrids are like that. So this is a python species, the spotted python. They get to a reasonable size where they're not super fragile and they're gonna be able to hold on to you, but they don't seem scary or intimidating or dangerous. And again, it's easy because they're really easy to afford now. I mean, they're more expensive than they used to be by far, but they're still not, you know, $1,000 animal or anything like that. They're just easy to handle and fun, and they eat really well. And, you know, you can have a display enclosure that has a little bit of height, but it doesn't need to be, you know, a monstrosity like if you had a much bigger arboreal species. Like if you had a Maclat's python, for example, they need similar parameters, but a bigger space because they're bigger animals. Spotted pythons are very similar in a lot of ways, but need a smaller space and they eat smaller food. But what if you're saying, hey, I actually do like the idea of a ball python sized animal, but it is a colubrid and moves a little bit faster? Well, then you want a bull snake. Bull snakes are number one, and I guess this is a weird one because they're very different, but they're big. They're sometimes pretty sassy, so you can tame them out pretty easily, but they have this vocalization where they huff and puff air and it sounds kind of cool, and they eat really well, but they get big. So it's a terrestrial or mostly terrestrial snake that is gonna get to a decent size. That's fun to handle, easy to find. There are some morphs out there, and again, you're not gonna have problem finding them, and they're not gonna be super expensive. It's not one of those animals that, oh, I saw one, finally I can get one. It's not like that. You can get bull snakes basically everywhere. Every expo I've ever been at has a bull snake or some form of Pituophis. So a gopher snake or a pine snake or something like that, and anything in that Pituophis family I think would work really, really well. Just keep in mind, they have a, you know, mean looking face, some would say, and they do take a little bit of work to calm down, but once you get a calm bull snake, they're just super fun and handleable, and they move around a lot more and a lot differently than a ball python. What do you think the best substitute for a ball python is? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your suggestions. As always, please hit the like and subscribe button. It really does make a difference. It costs you nothing and helps so much. And the Patreon supporters, you guys get videos early, discounts on merch. The one-on-ones have been so much fun lately. All that and more for as little as $1 a month, and that's it. I do videos twice a week, so I'll see you in the next one.